You know, a few years ago, the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives started making their ways into schools. Many parents, including myself, were blindly thinking, oh, great, diversity, yay, inclusion, yes, be kind to one another, the golden rule, thinking that that's what this meant, when in reality, no, it's not what it means. It is a vehicle for, we've talked about it before, it's a vehicle for Marxist ideals to get to our young people. The gender ideology stuff, it's a money grab between the government, the local hospitals, and her school district. Parents and grandparents have the power to course correct all of this, and so I'm really appreciative of AMAC and all of what you guys are doing.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber. You're watching Better for America. Joining me now to talk about what is driving gender ideology in schools is PragerU Kids host and outreach director, Jill Simonian. Jill, welcome to Better for America. I'm thrilled to have you back with me today.
I'm so excited to see you again. Hi.
Really good to have you here. Jill, I want to start with the obvious. Ever since Joe Biden has been in office, we've seen a massive uptick in the forceful teaching of gender ideology in our schools. I mean, kids are taught that they may have been born in the wrong body, and children are being encouraged to really denounce traditional Christian values that there are only two genders. Now, I speak with a lot of parents and grandparents, and they are largely against this kind of radical ideology. What, in your opinion, is driving this gender ideology in our schools? How did we get to where we are today?
Well, I mean, that's the question of the ages right now, right? The past few years, I think many of us, myself included, our minds have just been blown, wondering how this nonsense has edged its way into our schools and is literally teaching children and families and their unsuspecting parents, by the way, lies under this false veil of what everyone calls diversity and inclusion. You know, a few years ago, the DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives started making their ways into schools. Many parents, including myself, were blindly thinking, oh, great, diversity, yay, inclusion, yes, be kind to one another, the golden rule, thinking that that's what this meant, when in reality, no, it's not what it means. It is a vehicle for, we've talked about it before, it's a vehicle for Marxist ideals to get to our young people so that meritocracy is abandoned, truth is abandoned. It's designed to break the minds of young people from our school systems. And this is something that I've talked about so much through a lot of my parent alert conversations that we have on our website for PragerU Kids to, discuss things with parents. And this has been happening for decades, a very slow drip. We saw it accelerated the last 4 years. And, point blank, the gender ideology stuff is pretty much a money grab. And I had one conversation with a mom based here in Orange County, California. She was a regular mom, not an activist, nothing. But she saw this infiltration into, her children's schools in Southern California, and she started, going down the rabbit hole and getting all sorts of information through the FOIA requests, and found that it's a money grab between the government, the local hospitals, and her school district. And the conversation is on my PragerU.com/parent alert page. And it is titled exactly that, what's driving gender ideology into schools. And she explains it all, and it's mind boggling. But I'm hopeful that people are now waking up to the truth, because that's our why here at PragerU Kids, to wake families up to teach your children truth. And we have the resources to help parents and grandparents do that.
Yeah, and for so many good people out there, they think, how is it possible that children could be targeted in such a way, and for other people to benefit monetarily from such a thing? It is hard to really, for good people with good hearts, they say, oh my goodness, this is. As soon as you begin to peel away the layers, you recognize that there are a lot of players involved. And I say that this is, thank God for that silver lining with COVID and the pandemic, because it really opened up moms and dads' eyes, and they understood the kind of material that was being put in front of their children. I would say that today, especially, parents are feeling so overwhelmed. They are relieved. We speak to AMAC members on a regular basis. Grandparents are relieved that we've got a new administration in who's committed to eliminating DEI. But, for many parents, they feel powerless when it comes to their children's education. How can parents take back control to ensure that their kids learn good values? And how can PragerU be right alongside them every step of the way? Tell us a little bit about the great resources that you're offering.
Well, something that I'll tell you I discovered as a mom in my own home like a few years ago, I really did not have any depth of perception for how much knowledge my kids were not being taught. And I took it for granted that they were learning about the history of the United States, about how we were founded on Judeo-Christian values. I'm Armenian American. I'm a Christian. I'm a practicing Christian. And I myself, literally, Rebecca, I'm so embarrassed to admit this, but I had no idea. And I consider, I look back at my own education. I thought I went to very good schools. I went to public schools. I was raised in the church and Sunday school. I'm currently a Sunday school teacher in my, my own personal life. And I never truly understood that America was founded on Judeo-Christian values. And I know we have this whole thing about, separation of church and state, and the public schools keep talking about that. But historically speaking, America is a Judeo-Christian country. And
that's right.
Our schools started with using the Bible. Our school, now we're not saying that everyone has to believe in the the theology of it, but to understand our nation's origins is important for historical context, for current events knowledge, and for the future of our country. And I just took it for granted that, my kids know that. And guess what? My kids didn't know that. So in my home, I started really just daily, weekly, in little drips, 5-minute drips here, 20-minute drips here during our, our different American days of recognition, holidays, whether it be Christmas or Constitution Day on September 17th. I really started talking to my own kids about the founding of our nation, what truth is, what it means to have religious freedom, what it means to have religious liberty, what it means to have freedom, to even to those who maybe don't even want to worship at all. We still need to understand the origins of America. And so I started using our PragerU Kids resources. And some of the resources, we have resources for, civics education, for financial literacy, for the older kids. We have obviously U.S. and global history for middle school. But for some of our younger students, and obviously for the older students too, for those who maybe missed it, we have a very concentrated video and reading material armada based on faith, based on Judeo-Christian values. And it's all on our website, PragerUKids.com. You can check it out for free. You can subscribe for free. There's no cost to watch any of our videos. But our videos and many of our resources do teach about biblical historical figures. Moses, I'm going through the catalog in my head. Daniel in the lion's den, Noah's Ark. We have parables. We playfully titled it "The Kind Stranger," but it's the parable of the Good Samaritan. It's all of these stories to teach children how America is morally rooted in these moral codes, and that's something that everyone should learn.
It's so important that you remind us that our Constitution, nowhere does it say separation of state. It actually says the government shall make no law infringing on your right to worship and your religious rights to worship in the way and manner in which you'd like. And that was so important to our founding fathers. So this whole idea that we need to remove, the basic principles that our founding documents were based on. That is, believe in a higher power, in a God who gives us our individual rights. And I always say, Jill, that the greatest threat to Marxism is Christianity, because faith, Christian faith, if you're of Jewish faith, if you're of, Muslim faith, that requires you to take on individual responsibility. And we know Marxism doesn't want us to think about each and every one as a unique individual made in the image of God, but rather that we should be pitted against one another based on either the color of our skin, our geography, our sex, and so on and so forth. So this causes sort of class warfare in a sense, which is exactly what it seems DEI aims to do. It's not a merit-based system. It doesn't recognize and reward individuals, but it says, no, we need to erase sort of the history and the truth and replace it with a brand new ideology. So I am so grateful for the work that you are doing with PragerU and PragerU Kids in particular, because it is the future generation of our children that will determine what America looks like in 50 years, 100 years from now. One thing that I've heard a lot of people say, how do we fix it? And one suggestion was, why doesn't the new administration appoint a new 1776 commission who would prepare a report on civics education across the nation with recommendations for improving it? I thought, well, that's a great idea. What would you suggest the new administration do to take on what's happening in our public schools across all 50 states?
Well, it's interesting. There's something that I'm trying to educate myself more about, right? Because, I've worked here at PragerU for 4 years. And prior to this, I really am, ashamed to admit that I was miseducated in so many things regarding how our country works and how our system of government functions. And I'm very just thankful to say that I've now become better educated in actually learning the facts of how things work. And something that's been fascinating to me, and I'm not endorsing this or condemning it or any way, I'm just putting it out there because it's been in the media so frequently lately, this suggestion to dismantle the Department of Education. And, I know that's something that keeps coming up that possibly maybe this administration is going to look into doing, maybe not dismantling, maybe restructuring. It's very interesting to me because the more I learn about how that department works and what goes on there and why it was created and, versus how it's actually functioning, we've seen such an intense and concentrated explosion of bureaucracy and administrative practices that are just shoving these lies via DEI initiatives, via, what I call state-sanctioned racism into our schools. And it's not, this Department of Education, by all evidence and appearances, has failed to properly educate children, to elevate their knowledge. We see test scores continually decreasing. We see administration costs skyrocketing, and it's not adding up. It's, no pun intended, but, we wonder why our children, less than half of children across the United States aren't proficient in math. It's not adding up. This Department of Education is not adding up to really improve the academic knowledge of students. So, that's one thing. The other thing is what you just mentioned, civics education. If we do not teach our young people how our system of government works, that we are, that it's we the people who elect the representatives to lead and serve with a servant's heart, if we do not ingrain that in our children to learn from this point forward, we are in deep trouble. I mean, and that's one of the reasons why we've, truly partnered now with 9 different state education departments across the country. And we're still counting. It's this drive and this goal and this mission to teach civics education. We've got all the videos. There's a series we have called Street Smarts for 6th grade and up. And it's a game show, and it's all civics education, because our kids need to learn civics.
So important. And we love that you're getting this content out and that it's available. I encourage all of our listeners to check out PragerU and PragerU Kids, because there's so much there that you can get at, and it's not going to cost you a lot, and you can be a real influence in your child's life or your grandchild's life. Now, Jill, you've been really vocal about growing influence of teachers' unions and their agenda in shaping schools' policies. How do you think unions are truly impacting parental rights? And maybe what can parents do to reclaim their voice in education?
So I had this fascinating conversation with someone who was at the forefront of this movement, and I'm sure you know her name, Rebecca Friedrichs. She's an Orange County teacher, 30-year teacher. She's a teacher, she's a parent, and she decades ago started sounding the alarm about the danger of teachers' unions, how teachers' unions are political cartels and political machines, not to serve the students, not to protect the students, even not to protect teachers from unfortunate incidences or circumstances that may or may not be happening in schools. The teachers' unions are pure political machines, and we had this conversation on one of my Parent Alert interviews, and she discussed how the teachers' unions have now become a vehicle for Marxism, and the advice she gave, and she is a teacher. It was not a conversation that degraded teachers in any way. At PragerU Kids, we know there are good teachers out there. We know that there are teachers, even in your audience, who have served in classrooms and just, have poured their heart and soul into things and are now looking around saying, what in the world has happened to the school system? Rebecca described to me that for teachers, you do not have to join the union. She says that to dismantle the teachers' unions and to weaken them is a number one priority for course correcting our education system. And as for parents, do not be afraid to speak up and call out what your local union may or may not be doing in your own school district. We have school boards. Many representatives on school boards, unfortunately, are corrupted by so many of the unions. But go to your school board meetings, bring what the unions are doing in your own community to light, whether that is requiring teachers to teach about DEI or gender ideology. These are all union-driven things. It's up to parents to understand that we may feel like we can't do anything, but when you start speaking up and you start speaking out and you befriend a teacher and you find those teachers who are like-minded, things you can near miss the iceberg, so to speak. That's what we like to say, that you can steer the Titanic away from the iceberg. But it's up to us parents and grandparents especially. I especially say grandparents, do not give up in educating your grandkids and your own children about what's going on. There are, sometimes they don't want to hear it, but there are gentle ways to do it, and truth will eventually come to light and eyes will be opened. And I think having that faith is important.
Having that faith is so important, and having the courage to do the right thing, even under pressure. I see more and more people doing that, stepping up in a leadership role, making their voice heard, and being a part of AMAC is one way that our great members are doing that themselves. So we are thrilled to have you and PragerU as a partner. I know how many teachers are pressured. I've heard it from teachers myself, Jill. They are pressured, and they're politically. They're forced to adopt this political curricula really out of fear of repercussions. So to understand that they don't need to feel trapped by unions, that they can opt out, they can speak up, and they can really align themselves with the parents, I think is a good thing to do. But I am praying for major change, certainly, with a new administration, at least because once we put a bright light on what's really happening, that'll be a good way, I think, to give people encouragement and hope that we can turn things around. Jill, as 2024 is coming to a close, you've been so much at the forefront of advocating for parental rights and traditional education. So looking back, what has been maybe one of your favorite success stories this year, or one that gives you hope for the future of our children and schools?
Oh, there's so many.
I know.
I know. One thing that I think comes to the front of my mind is what has happened in Chino Valley School District here in Southern California. the current board president, Sonia Shaw, who I know personally, was never in politics, never an activist, nothing. She is a mom who was in her public school district, seeing that things were going very upside down, decided, felt a calling. When you look around and you're like, I wish God would do something, and God says, oh, how about you? That was her situation. She stepped up. She ran for her school board. She had the support of her community. She is now the school board president, and she is going, and she has such conviction and courage. I mean, she's incredible. Look her up, Sonia Shaw. She is going head to head with the Attorney General of California and the state of California, because in Sonia's district, they voted on a parental notification policy saying that, and this actually happened last year, saying that all parents must be informed if a child at school requests to use a different bathroom associating with a different gender or sex, or, so they voted on and passed a parental notification policy. State of California came after them, pitchforks and torches, metaphorically. And Sonia Shaw's school board is not laying down about it. They have, I believe I might be mistaken, but there's a lawsuit happening, and they are fighting, saying that this is absolutely legal, this parental notification policy, and what we have done is not outside of the legalities of the state of California. And so she's not afraid to fight. And it's just an inspiring story where, I've looked at her face to face, and she said, if you would have told me that I was going to do this 5 years ago, I would have laughed and laughed and laughed. But here she is. So the hope is that regular people who have not been involved can still do something if you have conviction, if you form your community support, and if you really are grounded in the sense of that what you are doing is protecting truth and protecting literally the future of the country. So that's hopeful. That's hopeful. And many people are waking up, and we have so many new things that are launching in the next year. I see a protection of patriotism reemerging, so to speak. I see an awareness to protect young girls in sports. And I also see an awareness and movement to actually honor our young men and our young boys too, and eradicate this nonsense of toxic masculinity that everyone talks about. And, we have new initiatives and new series coming up. This is one of them. It's called our Trailblazers of America series. It's celebrating the pioneers like Daniel Boone and all of those manly men who helped build America, who we still need. And I'm just very hopeful.
Well, I certainly know that with you there, with PragerU, and the great work you're doing through PragerU Kids, you give us much hope. Jill Simonian, I want all of our great followers, go ahead and follow Jill Simonian. Jill, what is your handle on your social media?
Sure. So I'm on Instagram and X, and it's at Jill Simonian, JillSimonian. So you can follow me there. And I just thank you for what you're doing too, because parents and grandparents have the power to course correct all of this. And so I'm really appreciative of AMAC and all of what you guys are doing.
Well, thank you, Jill. Back at you. We're so happy to work with you and just very much in support of the great work that you're doing. So be sure to check out PragerU Kids. Follow Jill Simonian, because she's going to give you some really upbeat, uplifting advice, information. She's got her eyes on all things protecting our great children in America. That's all I have for today, folks. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll see you back again next time.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.